Welcome back to another session on Innovation Alley at EduTech 2020, a fully virtual EdTech conference.
Started at the university where I was teaching first year accounting and essentially looking for a way to improve the performance and success rate for students.
How could we make it so that every student could be a mentor, every student could tutor somebody else? What's the technology piece missing there to make that work at scale?
Realistically, AI is such a powerful tool or mechanism that it can be deployed to solve so many different problems.
I wouldn't wish raising capital on my worst enemy. It's tough. It's no. We love your idea, but not yet. Come back in 12 months.
There's been a huge acceleration in the investment in EdTech at a global level.
There is still a role for government, there is a role for large education providers, there is a role for large education systems to play in that ideation space and the innovation space.
I'm Grainne Oates. I'm the CEO and founder of Quitch. I'm also an associate professor of accounting at Swinburne University, where Quitch emerged from. So it's a product that is a content-neutral, gamified mobile platform. It was co-designed with my students, and while it was initially built to support accounting students, it's built as a content-neutral platform, meaning it can be used across any discipline. So soon after its success with accounting students, it was rolled out to a number of disciplines across Swinburne University and then more broadly across the Australian university sector. So in areas such as engineering, geography, science, MBA students, a whole variety of subjects. Since then it's moved into the vet sector, and we're currently working with nursing, plumbing and carpentry students to assess whether it also will have a positive impact on their learning. In addition to that, we've moved into professional association, so CPA Australia was the first professional association to come on board, and again very positive feedback from that sector, and more recently we've moved into the corporate sector. So while we started off in the university sector, we've kind of pivoted into a whole variety of sectors that we weren't expecting at the outset when we started this project, but very excited about where we are at the moment. So the key challenges have been, the first one I would say is the raising of capital. So that I find is a very difficult task in Australia, and I think more difficult because that I'm a female entrepreneur, and the research clearly tells us that female entrepreneurs are not supported in the same way that male entrepreneurs are. And when we look at the research, in fact, female-founded organisations provide a greater ROI on the investment by the stakeholders, but also we have greater profitability and also often have very diverse organisations. I'm an experienced academic of more than 10 years, and what I found was that we were not delivering to students an experience that was working for them. So working with my students and running focus groups, we designed a solution together. That solution was, the students said it had to be mobile first, gamified solution was going to work very well for them, and notifications around when new material was unlocked. So what we did was we did some analysis and did some research on whether this would have an impact on outcomes, and we found a significant impact in the performance of students once they engaged with this tool. So the students talked about the fact that it was something they could use on the train while they were waiting for friends and so on. There was no consequences to them using this tool. They could practice as often as they wanted, and that they were not identified, so it was up to them how often they engage with the tool. With Quitch, we reimagined the student experience, and we rolled it out across Australia, and we had huge impact in terms of student performance. What I know is that my academic colleagues across the world are actually affected with exactly the same challenges that we are here. And what I've now found is that they are reaching out to us for this solution that we are able to provide. So for Australian EdTech companies, I think there is immense opportunity.
Welcome to this next session on Innovation Channel at the 2020 Virtual EduTech Conference. It's been a fantastic conversation we've had over a few days, and this is just another session that will also take us into the entrepreneurial journey in the EdTech space. Today we've got Grainne Oates that has built a globally focused EdTech company from an idea to fix a problem within her course. Quitch is the solution that has engaged uni students in her course and has now grown to supporting academics around the world with similar problems. Let's welcome Grainne.
Thank you, David. Great to be here.
Thanks very much, Grainne. Why don't we sort of begin really easily. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Quitch, the problems that you're working on and the exciting things you're doing right now?
Sure, would love to. So Quitch is a content-neutral, gamified mobile learning platform. And as you mentioned, it started at the university where I was teaching first-year accounting, and essentially looking for a way to improve the performance and success rate for students. So while students were in a lecture theatre, you can engage them, you can do some interactive games and so on with them. But then, of course, what happens once students go outside? How do you continue to engage them? So I was looking for a solution around that. So I built this solution actually. In fact, it was co-designed with students and with some of my academic colleagues, which I have to say, I think has been a lot of the success of Quitch. I think so often in these EdTech solutions, we don't have the student voice, or we don't indeed at times even have the educator voice. So I think critically important that we have both of those voices in building solutions in the EdTech sector. So I might pause there for a moment, David, because I have a lot more to say, but just to ensure I'm answering the questions that you want.
I'm really happy with that. I think that getting an understanding of what Quitch is doing and why is really important. We'll certainly come back to that educator piece, but you did mention something. Let's talk about that very briefly. What was the actual problem you saw? What was the thing that you're seeing in your accounting course that decided that you needed to go and build a platform to do this better?
Yeah, it was one of those kind of light moments, I have to say. So I was in class, and in first-year university students across the world, there's a very, very serious issue with very high dropout rates, up to 25% in the first 4 weeks of the course. Now, in most universities, we don't do a significant piece of assessment until week 6 of a course, so kind of when you're halfway through. Now, for most students, if you haven't really engaged up to that point, it's too late to kind of recover from there. And from the academics perspective, you haven't known what's actually going on with a lot of the students until that point. So I had a couple of things I really wanted to be able to identify that were very clear to me what the problems were. One, I needed to be able to reach out to students who were at risk as early as possible in the semester, giving them the greatest chance of success. Now, when I say at risk, I mean at risk of failing the course. So what we did with Quitch, we built these algorithms and logs where we could identify a student who was attempting to do the work but was getting less than 50% right. So Quitch allowed us, with our analytics in real time, to reach out to those students and support them early. So what we found, what we know, research tells us, the earlier we intervene and support, the much greater chance we have of success for those individual learners. So that was one part of it, and it's worked fantastically well, and pass rates improved incredibly.
You built something that is mobile first, right? So you actually designed for the mobile phone. Why? Yeah. Because and also I should ask actually, what time frame are we talking about? How long ago was this?
So I started off at Swinburne in 2015 when I got a small teaching and learning grant. So I got I think I started off with $10,000, and then we bumped it up to $25,000 to actually start to get a proof of concept, if you like, and build a minimum viable product and so on. So that was fantastic, and it was great that Swinburne did that, because had they not, we wouldn't be in the position we are today. So I think I'd say for all universities, I think these teaching and learning grants are really important, because and we'll probably come back to this later, but I know a number of academics who have some great ideas. But great ideas are one thing, but we need support to get it out to the marketplace and get it out amongst students and so on. But going back to the mobile first, David, yes, you're exactly right. It's been mobile first, and it continues to be, firstly, always focused on the mobile solution. And it was because I was watching my students leave the theatre one day, all 500 of them, and the first thing they did as soon as class finished was pick up their mobile phone. I was no different, if I'm perfectly honest about this. And so it struck me that whatever solution I came up with, it had to be mobile. And so I then also, of course, we all know that students and others, we all play games on our mobile phones, interact in them in that way. And so actually I read some literature on gamification in education, did some research in that area, and then ran some of my ideas past the students. What if it was a mobile solution? What if it was gamified? What if it pushed notifications out to you rather than you have to go into an LMS, pull it down? And so the students got really excited and said, you know what, we'll help you to build this product, which they did, and they continue. And it's one of the important things, I think, in EdTech in particular, because students' views can change so quickly, that actually at the end of each semester, we again review with the students what worked, what didn't work, and so on. So just very, very valuable in terms of where the product came from. Yes, I think it's really important for educators to be involved, as I said, in building these products.
I'm pretty certain that there aren't many student surveys where they rank the LMS experience really high on their university courses, but we won't talk about LMS engagement. That'll be too much and the bridge too far for us. How has the solution that you built changed over time? Like, you obviously started this with a particular thesis. How has it evolved over the last 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, it's involved hugely is probably the best way I can put it. And when I say that, David, it started off very much with the focus on, true and false questions, answering those directly after the lecture was delivered, and so on. So Quitch is built around that consolidation and reinforcement of primary learning. So it's not about replacing the other learning, but it's about a knowledge companion, if you like, to that. So what we've done over time is, one of the main, I think, things we've done is the development of the algorithms and the real-time analytics features. So we started off, the students, when I was initially building this, they were happy just to get questions in the app that they could answer in their own time. But over time, what we've built into that is a much more personalized journey. So, for example, one of the things students were saying, and it's even more important now that we're studying remotely, they want to know in real time what is their own performance. So I was able to tell the students what analytics that we were collecting as educators to help us understand where the problems might be with content and so on. But what the students wanted was a personalized journey, and they wanted on the app to be able to identify what were their own personal areas of difficulty, what were the gaps in their knowledge in real time. They wanted to know that and not wait until they went back into a class. Now, I think that's a really important thing, because that kind of feedback in real time, whether it's remote learning in a pandemic world that we're currently in, or any time to be able to give people real-time feedback, is critically important to their success, because it can then drive them to what areas they need to focus on, and it drives, of course, much greater success. So one of the other things we also then developed was this notion around notification. So instead of having to log into another system or whatever, you would actually get notifications on your mobile phone each time that something new is available for you to work on.
Okay.
Go, sorry. Yep. Okay. And then, of course, the other area that we've developed a lot is that gamification side of things, David. So the students wanted, gamification in terms of, how am I doing compared to my colleagues? How many points have I earned? How many badges? But also, much more important than that, activity levels. It tells you the mastery of the areas that you actually have now managed to master various skills. It also tells you what your progress is, and also activity levels within the app. What was your last winning streak? So a lot more gamification elements, a lot more real-time and personalized analytics around the individual performance. And then we've also built a lot of analytics in the educator portal for the academic as well, to help them drive greater success for their students.
Which is a really nice segue to the fact that you started as your career as an educator before this journey. I'm not sure what it was before that. And I'm wondering whether or not you think being an educator has helped you build the solution. Yeah, let's begin there.
Yeah, I think without a doubt, I would say it has helped me to build the solution, because it was very clear what the problem was. So as an academic, there's many problems we face.
Clear to you.
Sorry, what was that?
That was clear to you. It was clear to you what the problem was. Okay.
Yes, very clear to me what the problem was. And it's very clear to every academic what this problem is. And that is essentially lack of engagement. So what we always academics want to do, we want to be able to engage students better. We know if we can engage them better, then we can actually build solutions that are going to work for them. And this is why I come back again to the importance of having the student voice in any solution. It's critically important that we know. So we're building a solution that's not just something that's cool and tech and all of that, but actually something that solves the exact problem that you have. So when we were solving the problem for Quitch, you've got to look at both sides of the coin. So you have to look at what are the problems for the educator, if you like, the academic, but also what are the problems that your students are facing. So you need to find out what their pain points are as well. So really important that you bring both these stakeholders to the table in finding the right solution.
And do your educator colleagues consider you to still be an educator, or they feel like you've completely changed over to the dark side?
Have I changed over to the dark side? I would say that I don't know if there's a word for a bit of a combination between an educator and an entrepreneur, but I still feel very much that I'm an educator, but I'm also very much clearly an entrepreneur. So I continue to do teaching. I continue to teach, and I think that's actually very important to make sure that I continue to understand the journey that both myself as an educator is taking, and also, of course, what students are taking. So I guess many of them, yes, would say I've gone over to the dark side, but many of them are very pleased about that because we've built a solution that's helping them incredibly with the success of their students. So I think it's a positive thing in this case.
Fantastic. And how important has your connection to Swinburne been in the journey?
Yeah, it's been critically important. I think I mentioned before, it started off initially with the small teaching and learning grant that I was awarded at Swinburne to actually build the product. But it then became much more than that because we built the product. And while I'm an academic in accounting, obviously I started off in that area. But Quitch is content neutral, so it can be used across any discipline. So it's used in the sciences, in Swinburne, in engineering it started, so across a lot of different areas. So really we were able to get, if you like, proof of concept across different disciplines there. So really supportive and great in that area. And then further to that, once we started to grow and we brought a team on board, we were then able to use the innovation precinct at Swinburne, which was a great way to help us to actually, really start to launch the product, if you like, externally, get that promotion of getting the product out into other universities outside of Swinburne and so on. So yeah, critically important. And then we also outgrew the innovation precinct and into the city, but continue to get support from Swinburne. So yeah, absolutely critical.
And that I imagine that having the Swinburne, as with any university in Australia, to be honest, having their logo as a customer helps, right? When you go and talk to new customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's it's critical, and it also gives people in other universities an opportunity to talk to someone who has used the product, what the benefits are, what the value of adding it to the university is. So critically important. And then of course it's always great as well to have the ability to be able to speak to students and other colleagues and so on. Basically you've got access to that on the ground kind of focus groups and all of those things that come with it as you build out new products and so on. So yeah, it's great. And I think a lot of universities, I think, are welcoming educators coming up with ideas and then hopefully helping us to deliver on those ideas as well and get them to market.
You've obviously started also an export component to the business as well. So you've started focusing international markets. I'm interested in two aspects of that. Firstly, has the Australian brand, if you like, or the Australian moniker helped? And secondly, again, is there an international reputation for the Australian EdTech products into the markets you're going into?
I think actually that's a really important point. I think internationally, Australian education is very well regarded, very well. I think we've get a lot of respect in terms of what we deliver as an education nation, and especially if we talk about Victoria, the education state, and so on. And I think there is now a number of EdTech companies coming out of Victoria, coming out of Australia, and I think a number of them are actually getting quite a bit of traction overseas. We are now in a number of countries internationally and have signed partnerships with the USA, with Brazil, with a partner in Europe, and also in New Zealand. And we now deliver Quitch in actually seven different languages. So really exciting for us. And I think a lot of that, again, has come down to the fact that we have that Australian EdTech, or if you like, that Australian education tag behind us. There's no question that has positively influenced our growth. I have no doubt about that.
And when defining your export strategy, how did you work out which market you want to go to first and why? Yeah,
well, obviously, one of those things is the size of the markets. And also, obviously, the size is one thing, but then also those, when I have academic colleagues or when I know people in an area where actually are facing exactly the same problems. So then you can get a network of people who are, supporting this. They test the product, then word of mouth and marketing, obviously, around that. And essentially, that's the way we went about it. So this was through colleagues in other places across the world. And then the next step was that, for example, in Brazil and so on, we had to be able to deliver in the native language. So we also, for Europe, we had to be able to deliver in the native language. So we then built Quitch out to, as I said, to be delivered in 7 different languages. So yeah, so that's always, that is actually very exciting for us, I have to say.
Fantastic. And obviously, as an educator, you understand lifelong learning. So now that you've made this big leap into the entrepreneurial world, and I think you're still continuing to lecture at Swinburne, but now that you're in this space, where are you building your business skills? What tools and mechanisms and processes and procedures are you using to build your business skills?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things there. I mean, you're kind of thrown in at the deep end in the first instance, but I think I've been extremely lucky in terms of the advisors that I have had over the course of this journey, and they came about through, they have some of them invested in the business, and I met them in that way, and they've continued to advise me, so that's been fabulously lucky for me, I have to say. So we have, in terms of advisors, we have advisors around the tech development of the product and what our technology roadmap is. And that's Oji Udazu, who I met at South by Southwest a couple of years ago when we were selected by the federal government to go across and promote Australian EdTech. And so he continues to advise us. He's ex-Atlassian and Calendly, so really great to have him on board. And then other people, so Reid from the oil and gas industry, again, an investor in Quitch, but also in terms of helping us with that business development. But one of the other important things there is for example, the innovation precinct at Swinburne, which again, there's also these sort of opportunities at other universities where, we can run master classes in terms of whether that be around finance, whether that be around marketing for your entrepreneurial pursuits and so on, and how to get, from an MPV to get the product out to the market, how to transfer something from an idea into an actual product and so on. So there's a lot of support actually at the university side of things, but then also obviously you need to expand outside of that and get some people who are going to come on. I think it's really important to get great advisors, if you can, on your board and help you take things to the next level. You have to keep learning, and you've got to learn fast.
You've got no time you've certainly got to keep moving, so there's no doubt about that. So let's sort of start to think about just, while we're in the advice space, what's the one piece of advice you'd give to an academic or educator who's got an idea, they've been doing something in their class, they're thinking that this might be a possibility to turn into a business? What's the one piece of advice you would give them, other than no? You're not allowed to say no to them. You have to say, what would it be to help them on that journey?
So I would say the first thing is to be very clear in identifying what the problem is that you're facing. And then I would say to absolutely pursue your goals. So when I say, I said that I got this teaching and learning grant at Swinburne, I had applied 3 times before I was actually successful. And it was a matter of just continuing to knock on doors because I truly believed in the idea that I had come up with. And I truly believed that because I had got the feedback from people around me and from students. So I would say the first thing to do is obviously identify very clearly what the challenge or what the problem is, and then get some feedback straight away from your potential customers. So in this case, if it's going to be students, get your students, I would suggest, involved from the very beginning and start to clearly articulate how this problem you've actually come across, how you are going to solve that with the student voice in it. That would be my piece of advice. And
that's a little nice segue to say, go back and say, if you could go back to yourself from 3 or 4 or 5 years ago and give yourself some advice, what would the one piece of advice you'd give yourself?
What's the one piece of advice I would give myself?
Give yourself, now with hindsight, right?
Yes, probably with hindsight, what I would do, I would take some of the advice I've just given before, which is to get more people involved right at the very beginning in terms of clearly mean, I could clearly articulate what the problem was from my perspective, but getting other stakeholders in as well. So I think the sooner you can get feedback, I think the much better success you will have, but also I think the much faster you will be able to take things to market. So I would say, don't try and get the product perfect before you decide to unleash it, as I say. Get the baby out there and get as much feedback as you can. So I know a lot of people are terrified that, you know, their idea might be copied or all of this. I would say just get it out there, get some feedback, and you'll have much greater chance of success.
Fantastic. All right, so education at present is all about learners making their own choice. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, I thought I might allow you to choose your last question because it might be a bit fun. So feel free to either answer either of these questions, whichever one fits what you want to discuss. So option one is you can say you started as an educator and you're now an entrepreneur in the university sector. Which provides the most excitement, dealing with the university as a supplier or as an employee? So that's your first option you can choose. Or option two is Quitch has grown fantastically over the journey to date. 25% of Australia's EdTech companies have been founded by females. And as one of them, what do you think the innovation sector needs to do to support female founders better? So they're your two choices. You can pick whichever question you like.
I'm going to go with the one about female founders.
All right, go with that one.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
So you said 25% of them have been started by
25% of Australia's EdTech companies are founded by females or in executive ranks within that sector, which is slightly above the startup sector the innovation and startup sector as a whole.
Do we know of the ones who have started these? I'll ask you a question now, David. Started these organisations, how many have actually come from the education sector? So how many have been, you know, let's say academics, educators in whatever area, or teachers? I don't
have that data. I don't know how many are. But there's actually another really interesting stat, and that is if you look at the participation as educators themselves, it's something like, in very broad terms, 75% of all K-12 teachers are females, sort of 50% of all university educators are females, and then the only one sector where it's the other way is the vet sector, and there's probably traditionally heavily traded. There are a lot of educators in the vet sector who are males versus females, but essentially educators are overwhelmingly female, but the entrepreneurs are overwhelmingly male.
Yes, which is why I asked you that question, because I thought that is exactly the case. So I would say for my female colleagues out there in the education sector, that we really need to get behind one another and support one another with these ideas that they have. So I think what I'm saying is that we need to find a better place for people to, or a place for people to come together with their ideas, so that we can, you know, kind of support that and actually help these get to the next level. If there's only 25% founders, we need to pick up our game there, I would say. And
it's still a quite sizable cohort though, because in reality there are 600 companies, so roughly that means somewhere between 150 and 180 of them are going to be female founders. So that's a sort of nice point for me to plug that, you know, Clear Path syndicates that EduGrowth run are really important. It's a great place to connect with founder colleagues and peers. So with that in mind, I agree with you. Better connection and collaboration is really important, and it will accelerate the process for female founders. So I 100% agree. So with that end, I'd like to say thank you very much, Grainne, for giving us your time and sharing your entrepreneurial journey with us and the story of Quitch. And I'm excited to see what the next 3 to 5 years brings. If you've achieved this much in the last 5 years, I'm excited to see what the next 5 years brings.
Yeah, we're very excited ourselves, David, and thanks to you for all your support along the journey as well. It's been really very much appreciated. And yes, we'll keep you up to date on our next phase.
Thanks very much, Grainne.
Thanks, David. Bye now.
Welcome back to another session on Innovation Alley at EduTech 2020, a fully virtual EdTech conference.
Started at the university where I was teaching first year accounting, and essentially looking for a way to improve the performance and success rate for students.
How could we make it so that every student could be a mentor, every student could tutor somebody else? What's the technology piece missing there to make that work at scale?
Realistically, AI is such a powerful tool or mechanism that you can be deployed to solve so many different problems.
I wouldn't wish raising capital on my worst enemy. It's tough. It's no. We love your idea, but not yet. Come back in 12 months.
There's been a huge acceleration in the investment in EdTech at a global level.
There is still a role for government, there is a role for large education providers, there is a role for large education systems to play in that ideation space and the innovation space.